Welcome back to Conversations, and thank you for joining us. I'm Rusty Ray. We use this opportunity to talk to different people across the North Metro about what's happening, or in this case, what time of year it is. It's back to school, and so we've welcomed in three of our superintendents here in Anoka County that we primarily cover on North Metro TV, and today we're glad to be joined by Anoka-Hennepin School's interim superintendent, Dr. Kate Maguire. Kate, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Interim is a really unique title. It's a really unique chance for you. What does that mean, interim?
It means that I'm serving in a one-year capacity for the school board as they engage community members in building a profile and considering a search for a new permanent superintendent. So I'm delighted to be here to support the work of Anoka-Hennepin Schools for the school year.
So you spent a career of more than 30 years primarily in Osseo schools, teaching, administrator, and then superintendent, and you retired before the pandemic, well before the pandemic, really. So what was it about this to bring you out of retirement and into this role, full-time role for a year?
I looked at the mission for Anoka-Hennepin Schools, which is to effectively educate each student for success. I looked at the data around the current reality, so where are we compared to where we want to be with our students? And then I looked at the strategic priorities, which the board approved last year. And of course, the strategic priorities are designed to get us from our current reality to our mission, where we want to be with kids. And I'm passionate about what I saw there. It's a match to my experience from Osseo area schools. And I know a little bit about the school district and the work that's occurred here over the years, because we've collaborated on some things over the past years, and here I am.
And is that, from where you say they are and where you say they want to be, is that a long way to go? And how much of that can be started or even achieved in a year?
Good news about Anoka-Hennepin Schools. They work in a very strategic and systemic fashion. The school board annually approves strategic priorities. They winnowed the list of strategic priorities for this year, which I appreciate as an interim, because I have only 1 year to add value to the school district and make a contribution to the work of the school district. So they have a long history, though, of putting their financial and human resources behind identified strategic priorities. And the strategic priorities that they've identified this year are primarily, I would say, fall into three buckets around creating safe and welcoming school and learning and work environments. There's a strategic priority around academic achievement, obviously, and then around the spaces and facilities and support for the teaching and learning that occurs in classrooms. And it's a match to my experience and work that I'm familiar with and anxious to make a contribution to here.
What are some things that Anoka-Hennepin Schools are already doing, and what do you think they could do more of to offer that welcome and safe place, like you said, but also that support? I feel like that those are overlapping a little bit, not totally. What are they doing already, and what do you think that they can strive to do even in the short term?
This year, everyone is hoping to get back to sort of a new normal, of course. So there's some things that we're specifically working towards this school year around that safe and welcoming environment in particular. We know, even though students were back in school last spring, it was different. And we know that when students and staff arrive now this week and next week, that we have to be very intentional about building back community among staff members and among students. We know that we have to be very intentional about refreshing our school culture and our organizational culture, because people have been apart for so long. Students aren't necessarily back in that pattern yet of a full school year. And we know that shows up in lots of ways that we don't necessarily always appreciate, so that we have to be very intentional about building back those patterns and that value for school and that value for being together. Our theme this year is live well, lead well, learn well. So we're doing a lot around that theme. And that is about adults supporting each other and taking care of ourselves, because we know that coming out of this pandemic, the anxiety and dysregulation that has caused in our country and across our world, and we know that we have to take care of ourselves and look out for each other and be intentional about taking care of ourselves in order to take care of the students that we serve. So we're really focusing on that.
It seems like burnout is a reality, not just for teachers, not just for support staff or whatever in public education, but across many fields. But is that a factor in talking about those things you just mentioned and supporting each other and providing support from the top down or on a school level from the principal on down? Is that a part to address that, so that there aren't continuing to be large numbers of teachers leaving the profession.
That's absolutely correct. Burnout is a real thing. Now, I have to tell you, in our profession in general, I do have to tell you that I'm not hearing that in Anoka-Hennepin schools. So I've been out and about. I've met with school board members. I've met with all the leadership teams. I've met with principals. I'm going out now to try to get through all the school buildings. And I met with 300 new teachers yesterday. We greeted them at Blaine High School. So I've literally talked with hundreds and hundreds of people so far. And here's what I hear about Anoka-Hennepin schools. People are deeply loyal. Many of them have been here many years. There are entrenched networks of relationships in our communities and among the adults in the school buildings in all kinds of roles. And so many people I've met have graduated from high school here. They've come back to work. They've come back to live. Their kids work here, right? They come back into our communities, which I think just speaks so well of the school system and the communities. So at the same time, I hear that energy and that commitment around students. People are ready to try to get back into a normal pattern so that they can relax a little bit and enjoy what we used to enjoy and remember why we came into the profession in the first place. That's certainly true. And district level support and leadership support for teachers and other staff members is crucial to making that happen.
What about support in terms of students and mental health? That's been a big topic in this district for a lot of different reasons. And is that something, there's also any kind of specific ideas or specific initiatives to help support that, given all those challenges you mentioned?
Yes, very intentionally so, because as you say, we know that students have experienced lots of anxiety, perhaps in their family, in their own health, and so forth over the last couple of years, and that dysregulation of pattern of being in school in a place that feels safe. So we're being very intentional about that. As part of their strategic priorities around that safe and welcoming environment, the school board has made intentional financial and human resource investments in having additional staff. And those additional staff I would put into two categories: both academic support for students who need support catching up and getting back on track, and then around that social, emotional, mental health realm. We provide that support in a couple of different ways, both with our own staff members, counselors, social workers, other leaders and teachers in the building who provide that support, and then also with community partners, healthcare providers in the region that interface with our students and staff to provide support.
You mentioned the community of a school building and the fabric of that community. Parents are obviously a huge part of that. Perhaps they didn't have the same access because of COVID and volunteer opportunities, or they were working and their demands had changed. We've seen a lot of parent involvement, politically driven, in school board and school board races, or people showing up to harangue school board members in public. But is there a chance to re-engage parents in a positive way, either through volunteer or through other outreach opportunities, to keep them involved or to draw them back in, to get them re-involved? Because there is a lot of ideas on the side of parents about what should be happening in classrooms and what should be taught in classrooms. Again, I think a lot of that is politically driven, some of it. So what can the district do to keep parents engaged and involved?
I appreciate that question. And regardless of whether parental interests or family interests are politically driven or not, from my perspective, it's really about this. We serve children in our schools, right? It's our responsibility to ensure that we're listening and attending to the interests and the needs of parents, because we serve their children in our schools. That's where we want children to be. And I think we have a deep obligation to make sure that we're listening and that we're engaging families in a positive way. And I think I certainly think there are opportunities to do that. Opening our schools back up is one way to get parents knowledgeable about what really is happening in our schools. The curriculum that we use, the instructional practices that we use, right? Those are here for to be revealed and for parents to look at and to understand. We're proud of the work that we do. Welcome parents and community members into our school to examine that work, because I think our families and our community members and our parents would be very impressed with what is happening in Anoka-Hennepin schools.
What's actually happening instead of what they've heard is happening.
Right. We all have different sources of information, and I respect and appreciate that people have different perspectives about what might be happening. I also would invite families and community members to become informed as much as they possibly can be by engaging directly with those local schools. We know, our data tells us on our surveys, annual community surveys every year, we know that our families and our community members respect, appreciate, and value our staff members in Anoka-Hennepin schools. In fact, they trust staff members. They're a good source of information for community members. That's fed back to us by parents each year in our annual survey, and that is the same in this year's annual survey results, which actually will be shared at a public school board meeting at our next public meeting. I'd encourage community members to tune in and to listen to the results of that community survey.
Excellent. Okay, good to know. A couple challenges, though, facing the start of the school year. COVID is still here.
Just a couple.
Just a couple, right. We'll highlight these two.
Yes.
COVID, as I joke around here, it's going to be a pandemic until it's not. And it still is in many regards. It's still out there. I think a lot of things have relaxed, but I want to ask, does the school system have something in terms of a game plan? Should a model need to be shifted? Has it, and this is not an easy word to use, but is it easier to shift to a model because of what has happened over the past couple of school years, or almost 3 school years? Can the district shift into different levels of having to change if a new variant comes up, or if levels or tests, or case numbers rise to another threshold of some kind? Can the district pivot?
Well, first I want you to know that David Law promised me that wasn't going to happen this year when I... No,
How nice of him.
I'm teasing about that.
Yeah, right.
Yes, the district could absolutely adapt in a more fluid way than has ever happened before. That's probably true of many school districts because of the experience that we had over the last couple of years in needing to adapt to the crisis. First and foremost, I would say that we are committed to a safe and healthy work and learning environment. To that end, we'll be keeping in place some of the protocols that were in place last year around, that we've learned over the last couple of years about enhanced filtration, air filtration, enhanced cleaning practices, helping students and others understand the importance of both respiratory and hand washing protocols and health, for example. All of those things will still be in place because we just know that's good to keep a safe and healthy work and learning environment. In addition to that, though, we will not have the same things in place around masking or requirements for vaccinations that have been previously in place. We certainly will go back, I would say, more to our normal protocol around when your student is sick, please keep them home from school. Right. That's not new. That's just good practice. We want students and staff to be safe and healthy. We want people to stay home when they're ill. Let that fever pass before you come back to school. Students and staff members or community members are certainly welcome to mask if they wish. It's not a requirement. We certainly will adapt if we need to. I'm hoping that doesn't happen and we're back to a new normal this year.
I think everybody hopes that and feels that way too. Another challenge is shortage of people or shortage of staff. And it's not just, again, it's not just public education. I talked to Blaine Police Chief Brian Padani a couple of weeks ago. He said, look, when we have a police officer opening, we're seeing fewer applicants. A lot of jobs, a lot of professions across many industries, seeing fewer people applying for jobs. So that leads perhaps to shortages of staff. The Star Tribune reported that your district had hundreds of staff openings a couple of weeks ago. Channel 5 is out with a report about a shortage in particular of special education staff and teachers. Where does the district stand? Are there things being done to try to address that? And more importantly, I think, what impact is that having on a classroom or a school level?
Yeah, good news, bad news. I think the good news is Anoka-Hennepin continues to be a destination place for people to come. I heard that from the 300 teachers we greeted yesterday. There's a reason that they're here, and they're coming from all over, other school districts, from within the community, some new grads, some people changing professions. So good news, there are people choosing Anoka-Hennepin and choosing our profession. Certainly, we do have a shortage of teachers. A few weeks ago, we were at about 400, not just teachers, but all positions. We're down to about 250. Of those 250 positions now in the last couple of days, the primary positions that we have available are classroom teaching positions, special education, and regular education teachers in some cases, and paraeducators, those that most closely support teachers in the classroom and in operational functions in the school district. Those are our two greatest needs, although there are some others as well. We have a recruitment and retention team and a plan. We're out at job fairs. We use social media extensively. Word of mouth in the community is important. So questions like this that you just asked are important for us so that community members know that there are both part-time and full-time jobs available, and they can go to the website if they're interested. And who doesn't love being supported by a mission around serving children?
And I may not have this quite right, but the paraeducators or paraprofessionals in some cases, that could be an entry for someone who may be interested in changing careers or starting a career in education, correct? There's not the same prerequisites to have those jobs as a full-time classroom teacher, right?
Yes, thank you for that. We do have a Grow Your Own program. We work with local colleges and universities. We have some staff members who begin in paraeducator positions, for example, and then work their way into full teaching positions. As a matter of fact, we had more than 8 of those teachers in our new teacher workshop yesterday, so it's paying off.
So knowing the school year is starting and knowing, not to put this in too stark of a terms, but knowing that this position has an end date for you, what are you most looking forward to for the 22-23 school year?
Well, first of all, I am meeting people all over the school district, as I mentioned, and I am energized by the passion that people have for their work and their commitment to the school district. I am most looking forward to supporting the strategic priorities and the equity achievement plan that have already been approved by the school board. What I saw in those plans really resonated with me, and it's work that I'm passionate about, which is exactly why I'm here.
Okay, could be a lot of things happening this school year in the
Yes.
Anoka-Hennepin schools.
Yes,
Dr. Kate Maguire, thank you for coming today. We appreciate it.
thank you so much.